Word nerds. Let's talk vocabulary. I know it can feel like an uphill battle sometimes, right? Like you're just drowning in new words.
Totally. And the way most people try to learn vocabulary just doesn't work.
Yeah, just trying to memorize lists of words. Forget about it. We are going to ditch that approach in this deep dive and talk about strategies that actually work.
Things that help you remember the words and use them correctly.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of using stories to learn new words?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's super effective, and we're going to talk all about that and a lot more, so let's dive in.
The biggest problem I see is students just trying to memorize definitions
Right.
without really understanding how to use the word.
Yeah, it's like you can remember the definition, but then you try to actually use the word in a sentence, and it just sounds weird.
Exactly. And that's because you're missing the context.
Context is king.
Right, like take the word ambiguous.
Ambiguous, okay.
If you just see it on a vocab list, it's meaningless, but if you see it in a sentence,
The
ending of the movie was ambiguous,
ooh. Okay, I get it.
then you understand how it's used and it's more likely to stick.
Right. The light bulb just went off for me. So how do we actually use context to learn new words?
Well, the first thing is to just pay attention when you're reading or listening.
Oh, man. I am so bad at that.
Don't just let the words wash over you.
Like skimming? Yeah, I do that.
Actually think about what they mean and how they're being used in the sentence.
Okay, that makes sense.
And also, when you come across a new word, don't just look it up in the dictionary and move on.
Yeah, I am guilty of that too.
Look at the example sentences they give.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So you can see it in action.
Makes sense. Okay, so what about this? I've heard people say that learning words in groups can be helpful.
Yeah, like themed groups.
What does that mean?
Like if you're learning about history, you might learn words like revolution, monarchy, empire,
Oh, I see.
all at the same time.
Because they all relate to each other.
Exactly. That way you're not just learning random words.
You're building like a little mental map.
Right. And it's easier to remember because they all have something in common.
Okay, that's a cool tip. What about people learning English as a second language? Any advice for them?
I think the biggest trap is relying too much on translation
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
instead of trying to understand the word in English.
So instead of trying to translate persuade into your native language, you should try to understand what persuade means in English.
Exactly. Think about how you'd use it in a sentence.
I persuaded my friend to try sushi.
Perfect.
Okay, so we've got context, themed learning.
Yeah.
What else? What about actually using the words?
Oh, yeah, that's super important. Don't just passively learn them.
Right? Got to get active.
Write sentences with them. Use them in conversations. Even try teaching them to someone else.
Oh, I like that.
The more you use them, the more they'll stick.
Okay, speaking of sticking, have you ever tried spaced repetition?
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorites. It's basically a way of reviewing words at specific intervals.
Using flashcards or an app?
Yeah, exactly. There are a bunch of apps out there that can help.
Like Anki?
Yep, Anki, Quizlet, Memorize.
Cool, and that really works.
It does. It takes advantage of how our brains work to make sure you remember the information long term.
Okay, and then there's this thing I've always wondered about. Collocations.
Ah, yes. The key to sounding like a native speaker.
Okay, so what is a collocation?
It's basically words that go together naturally.
Like peanut butter and jelly.
Exactly. So in English, you would make a decision, not take a decision.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or you'd say heavy rain, not strong rain.
Got it.
Learning these collocations can really help your fluency.
Okay, so I have to share my favorite vocabulary learning tip because it's just so much fun. Story time.
Oh, yeah, I love that one.
It's basically you come up with a funny or memorable story to help you remember a new word.
And the weirder the story, the better.
Right. Like the more outlandish it is, the more likely you are to remember it.
Because it creates a strong image in your mind.
Exactly. All right, so we've talked about a ton of great strategies, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is to actually practice.
Consistency is key.
Right. Even if it's just for 5 minutes a day.
Make it a habit and you'll see results.
It's like working out.
Exactly. The more you do it, the stronger you get.
I love that analogy. Yeah. So before we wrap up, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that vocabulary is about more than just sounding smart.
Oh, that's good.
It's about being able to express yourself clearly and understand the world around you on a deeper level.
Powerful stuff.
Oh.
Well said. Okay, folks, that's it for today's deep dive. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.
And let us know in the comments what your biggest vocabulary struggles are.
We love hearing from you, and maybe we'll even feature your question in a future episode. Until next time, happy learning.
Bye, everyone.